What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'm going to talk about blank game week 26. The Carabao Cup finalists have now been confirmed. Chelsea are going to play against Liverpool, so they will blank in game week 26, and so will their opponents. And as we've got a bit of time before Tuesday's game week 22 deadline, I thought I'd talk about the possible implications for FPL and what there is to start thinking about. To be honest with you, there are still more cup games to come before that deadline. So we've got the FA Cup fourth round this weekend. That will help us in addition to this information in terms of planning. So if you want to, feel free to just skip this video and come back early next week when I'll be talking about everything in terms of information that we've got, what that means moving forward. But for now, we're just going to talk about game week 26. It's just going to be a kind of one take thing. Before we get into it, I did see this tweet from Ben Credin last night that said that there is a chance, a very, very small chance, that it might not be a blank in game week 26. But to be honest with you, I would just take it that it will be a blank. For it not to be a blank, both Liverpool and Chelsea and their opponents in game week 26 would all have to be out of the FA Cup before the fifth round. And that's just really unlikely to happen. So I would treat it as a blank, knowing that it's not 100% guaranteed, but it almost is. And we will know before the game week 22 deadline most likely anyway. So the four teams blanking are Liverpool, obviously in the final. Their opponents were Luton in game week 26. Chelsea, who were in the final, and their opponent was Spurs. So what I've got on screen is the next four fixtures, because what you need to start thinking about is which players from these teams are kind of worth maybe buying if you don't already own them, or holding on to, and at what point might you need to get rid of them. So for Liverpool, they got Chelsea at home this week, Arsenal away in game week 23. As I've said already this week, I don't think they are fantastic fixtures. Will Liverpool score in both of those games? Probably. So if you want to buy an attacker, it's not the end of the world, certainly. But on paper, they're not great. Then it's Burnley at home in 24, which is really good. And then it's very likely that Liverpool and Luton will both double in 25 now that they're blanking in 26. So if that happens, Liverpool will have Brentford away and Luton at home, which is pretty decent. And generally, you would want 3 Liverpool players for fixtures like that. But I guess with everything now, with doubles, blanks, chip use and stuff like that, you're trying to get points over the long run. And sometimes foregoing points in the short term might be a better option. So what I mean by that is, yes, I would absolutely love to have 3 Liverpool for that game week 25 double. And we'll talk about chips a little bit later on. But if they then blank in 26, I've got to deal with that as well. And I've probably got players from these other teams as well to think about too in game week 26. So Liverpool's quite tricky right now because Trent's obviously been out injured. He's probably going to be back for their FA Cup game this weekend. If that's the case, he's almost certainly going to play against Chelsea. But obviously Salah's out. When will he be back? Jota and Nunez looking good right now. How long will their minutes remain decent? Will it be for game week 25? Is it worth getting them in? These are all things to think about over the next few days ahead of game week 22, preferably. With Luton, I don't think there's really too much concern from an FPL point of view. I think the one player that people have been bringing in recently is probably Doughty in defence. And I think if you've got him, you definitely hold on to him until that possible double. But I'm not sure I would bring him in because I look at those fixtures and think Brighton at home, no clean sheet probably. Newcastle away, very difficult. Sheffield United maybe. Probably no clean sheet in either games in their potential double, which would be Man United at home and Liverpool away. But I guess he is quite attacking. So I don't mind it. I'm just not sure he's so good of an FPL option that he's worth then having to deal with in the blank. Because with Chelsea and Spurs also blanking, you got Palmer. Some of you will have Chelsea defence. Obviously, Parr is very popular. Some people have just got Richarlison. You know, Maddison could be back soon. I think he's back in training. Is carrying a Luton player through worth it? Probably not, but I wouldn't completely rule it out because if you need an enabler in defence, then I do quite like Dowie. So just consider that. With Chelsea, they've got Liverpool away in 22, Wolves at home in 23, Palace away in 24, and Man City away in 25. So the next 4 game weeks aren't that good. If you didn't already have Palmer, I'm not sure I would necessarily be looking at bringing him in. But obviously, everyone's team is different. You might need a midfielder, enabler, and all that kind of usual caveats. I just think having to play away to Liverpool and City is not great. But Wolves at home and Palace away in between aren't bad. I think a lot of the decisions around Chelsea will depend on whether they play in game week 29 or not. So game week 29, remember, those fixtures will be on if neither team is in the FA Cup quarterfinals. And we might find out for Chelsea whether that's going to happen this weekend, because if they get knocked out by Villa, then Chelsea versus Arsenal in 29 will be on. And then having someone like Palmer, who a lot of people picked up cheap, might be worth carrying through. I can tell you right now, anyone that owns Palmer is not even giving it a slight thought about selling him right now. But down the line, if they've got Man City away in 25, a blank in 26 and 29, then it might be worth getting rid if you need to fill that spot with someone better. Again, nothing right now needs to be set in stone. It's just worth kind of thinking about, because you're not going to be able to carry through without free hit like 8 to 9 players from these teams. And I'll talk about that later. We're going to look at the next 4 fixtures in a minute as well. With Spurs, they've actually got a pretty good fixture run. I wouldn't say that any of their fixtures are necessarily green on the fixture ticker, but Brentford at home, Everton away, Brighton at home, Wolves at home before that blank. 3 home games. We know how attacking they can be. I think if you've got Porro, you're definitely holding on to him for now, but he might be someone later on that needs to be thought about for selling. So, for example, for me, I've got Porro. No thoughts about getting rid of him anytime soon. But in 25, I got to remember the game weeks here. Man City are also going to double, and they don't blank in 26. So right now, I definitely prefer Porro over Walker. But by game week 25, that Porro to Walker transfer might be pretty decent to get ahead of the blanks and stuff like that. But I think Spurs' fixture run is pretty good. I'm not sure whether I would be buying someone like Richarlison right now. I think if you're going to buy him, this is probably the last week to do it so that you get, hopefully, at least 4 game weeks out of him. But obviously, longer term, he is going to probably become a slightly worse option because his minutes will go down. He won't have penalties with Son there. He's going to blank in 26. So your time to bring him in is limited, I would say. In terms of the following 4 fixtures, obviously, they all blank in game week 26. Afterwards, Liverpool have got Nottingham Forest away, Man City at home in 28, and then Everton away in 29. Now, again, those game week 29 fixtures are all reliant on the FA Cup to whether or not they're going to be on. But could you see one of Everton or Liverpool get into the quarterfinals of the FA Cup? Probably, in which case they would also blank in 29. So, potentially for Liverpool, you've got Burnley at home in 24, a double in 25, looks great, right? Really good fixtures. But then you got a blank in 26, Forest away in 27, which isn't bad. Man City at home, which, look, Liverpool always score, but I wouldn't expect massive amount of goals in that game. And then you got a potential blank in 29. So Liverpool are kind of a tricky team where you might really want them for 24 and 25, but after that, for the next 4 game weeks, they might not really come into our thinking too much whatsoever. So it's quite hard right now, because of the injury to Salah in particular, to know exactly how many Liverpool players to have for that and how to handle it. I think my main strategy at the moment, which has been the same for the last couple of weeks, is where possible, just roll a transfer. Even if that means you're slightly denting your points potential for that game week, hopefully the more information you get later on will help as well. Because we've also got like African Cup of Nations and Asian Cup results to come as well. So teams are going to start getting knocked out of those competitions. Players will be back. I mean, look, I don't want to get into it too much, right? I've seen a lot of people saying that they don't think Salah's really injured. He's just going back to Liverpool, hoping that Egypt get knocked out and then he's available to play. I don't think that's the case whatsoever. But I wouldn't be completely surprised if Egypt go out and then suddenly Salah is back for 24 or 25 or something like that. Because he is someone, it's not even really to do with that. It's more that he is just someone that's very rarely injured, right? So him being back sooner rather than later wouldn't completely surprise me. So I guess you've got to have a plan for that. The fixtures afterwards, not that great. And if you're looking at 26 to 29, you're probably not going to be maybe Captain Salah in 27, possibly. Let me just double check the other fixtures that week. So Liverpool have got Forest away that week. I mean, Man City have got Man United at home. I mean, if Haaland's fit, no one's going to worry about captaining him against Man United. Arsenal against Sheffield United away. Spurs against Palace at home. There's other captains you could go for. I guess to sum it up, Liverpool are not going to be essential 26 to 29, especially if they're blanking twice and playing Man City. With Luton, I don't want to go into them too much. I think it is just Doughty probably in defence. They've got a blank in 26, Villa at home in 27, Palace away 28, and Forest at home in 29. If that fixture goes ahead, again, if Nottingham Forest go through, I think they've got Bristol City in the next round, and they get through the 5th round. then that game wouldn't be on anyway. With Chelsea, and this is why I think, especially around Cole Palmer, if you got him cheap, it's worth just not making any rash decisions on that. They got Brentford away in 27 after their blank, Newcastle at home in 28, and Arsenal away in 29. Now, that fixture run doesn't look fantastic. It's okay, but not brilliant. But potentially, if that Arsenal game is on in 29, and all it takes is Chelsea not going through to the quarterfinal, so they could even lose to Villa this weekend, and if not, they could lose in the next round, then although Arsenal doesn't look great, if a few other fixtures are on that week in 29, which makes you not want to free hit, then keeping Palmer through, and Arsenal players as well, is definitely something that I'll be thinking about doing. I guess a lot of it will come down to when you want to use your free hit. And Game Week 29 is likely to be the biggest blank game week of the season. So it's not just 26, there'll be another one later on. But if there's a few key games on with key players playing, you might not need that free hit, and therefore carrying Chelsea through could be decent. And then for Spurs, just to finish off here, blank in 26, 27 is Palace at home, 28 is Villa away, and 29 is Fulham away. So if one of Fulham or Spurs get to the quarterfinal, that game will be off. Now, we might find out this weekend about that game as well, because Spurs are playing against Man City in the 4th round. Now, Spurs can, of course, beat Man City, but most people would put City as favourites. And Fulham are playing Newcastle. Now, they are at home, and obviously Newcastle's away record hasn't been great. But if Newcastle, I think I've got this right anyway, if Newcastle and City both win, then Spurs and Fulham would both be out of the FA Cup. And then in Game Week 29, Spurs would play. Then all of a sudden, if you've got Arsenal, Chelsea and Spurs all playing that week, then I'm looking at my team thinking I've got Palmer, Porro, Richarlison. Whether or not Richarlison's a good long-term hold, debatable, but don't need to worry about that right now. So Palmer, Porro, Richarlison. I've also got Saka, Gabriel and Saliba. And of course, the fixtures aren't fantastic, right? It's an away game for Spurs. It'll be a home game for Arsenal, but it's against Chelsea. But suddenly I've got 6 players who I think are mostly pretty decent, all playing in 29. Maybe I don't need my free hit then. And that would open it up to maybe use it in Game Week 26 instead, so I can load up on my Liverpool players and just not worry about those blanks that are almost certainly going to happen. So lots going on at the moment. I'm just going to go through some general thoughts. So unless you're going to use a free hit, it's pretty much going to be impossible to carry 6 Liverpool and Man City players through double Game Week 25 and 2 to 3 Spurs and Chelsea players, which are then going to blank in 26. So if you've got, let's just say for argument's sake, you've got Walker, Foden, Haaland, and then maybe even just 2 from Liverpool. So let's just say Trent and 1 attacker, plus Palmer, Porro. Like, even if you don't have Richarlison like I do, or you don't want to get Son back, that's 7 players. That's going to be difficult to carry through without free hit. So I think you've almost got to get used to the fact that you're probably going to be selling someone. Sorry, no, I've got that. Do you know what? I've got that wrong. This is the problem doing it in one take, because City aren't blanking, right? So let's just say you've got Trent and 1 attacker from Liverpool, and then, like me, I've got Porro, Richarlison and Palmer. I've got 5 outfield players blanking in 26. I can only bench 3 of them, so I've got to make plans to potentially sell 2 of the others unless I free hit. So you've got to start looking at how many players you're going to be carrying through that period, and at what point you might want to transfer them out. So I've talked already about doing Porro to Kyle Walker. That's probably a move that I'd want to do as late as possible, right? So it's all about, I guess it's how quickly can you set up to cover the double and then also get through 26. So I'll come on to free hit in just a second. What's the plan if Salah's fit for Game Week 25? That's really worth considering, because I spoke about Salah the other day. I do think he's now a pretty easy sell for Game Week 22, because he's likely to be out for 22, 23, probably 24 as well. But if he's suddenly back for that double in 25 and it's Brentford away and Luton at home, can you really go through without owning him? Like, that might be the best call for your team, because straight after it's a blank, you've got Man City, then they might have another blank in 29. But can you actually go through 25 without Salah with those 2 fixtures? Most FPL managers would find that really difficult. And if you get Haaland back this week, you then make it a bit more difficult to get Salah back in. For my team, for example, if I do Salah to Foden and get Haaland in, the easiest way to get Salah back is either to sell Haaland again or to sell Trent. And obviously, he's someone I want for 25. So Salah really is worth thinking about, because at the moment he's out of mind. He's injured, right? He's not available. That could change pretty quickly. And how are you going to get him in for 25 if you want him at all? I think if you're going to free hit the reason to free hit in 25 is if you don't want to carry Liverpool and Man City players before and after the blank. Obviously, in Game Week 26, it's not a blank for Man City, but if you don't want to carry them after the double, then free hitting in 25 would be the plan. I think there are some reasons to think about that, but I don't particularly want to get in a load of Man City and Liverpool players that long-term might be minutes risks. And obviously, with the free hit, you can decide as late as possible which players to go for. So it might be that you think, overall, the minutes of De Bruyne and Jota, etc., aren't going to be great, but for 25, they're worth the risk. You can get Trent, Jota, maybe Salah if he's back, De Bruyne, Haaland, plus one other player, and then you don't have to worry about them before or after the double. So that's one of the reasons to free hit in 25. I guess free hit in 26 would be if you do want to carry Liverpool, Spurs, and Chelsea players in particular now and after the blank. And I think that will become more viable if Spurs and Chelsea are playing in 29 in particular. And obviously, if you want to load up on the likes of Jota and that right now. So potentially free hit 25 or 26 could be an option. As it stands, I don't plan to use the free hit in either of those weeks, but I really am just open-minded about when might be the best week. And every time we get more information, that free hit strategy is going to change. So right now, it'd probably be in 29 to cover the blank. But if I can get through 25, 26, and 29, just with transfers without too much issue because of the way the fixtures fall, then I might just save my free hit for a double later on because we'll have big double game weeks in 34 and 37. Triple captain is another interesting chip because I think if Haaland and Salah were both fully fit and doubling in 25, most people would just use the triple captain that week. But if there's doubts around both of those, will you still want to use it in 25 because the double for City and Liverpool are pretty good? Or do you want to save it for a different double down the line? But if you do that, you then can't use a different chip like the bench boost or the free hit in the same week. Now, we are going to have enough double game weeks to fit in all these chips. But obviously, if you don't triple captain in 25, and there's only two more big doubles, 34 and 37, and you're going to use your triple captain in one of those, you then can't free hit and bench boost in both of those. So, like I said, lots of things. I wish I had all the answers for you right now, but this is the kind of stuff we're waiting to decide. And then with bench boost, I think there is potential to use it in game week 25 in particular, especially if one of Salah or Haaland isn't an option. And the reason for that is there'd be more money to go around. So most people's teams in game week 25 are probably going to look pretty good. Obviously, any team with a double, you will just play. But Arsenal have got Burnley away in 25. Spurs have got Wolves at home. So there are quite a few good fixtures to go around. Even if you've got like a cheap Aston Villa defender like a Konzo or someone like that, or even a Fulham defender if some of you have carried them through, they're playing each other. Newcastle defence, Dan Burn, they've got Bournemouth at home. There is scope to potentially bench boost in 25, but again, it really depends on how your team is set up and how many transfers it would take to get to that point, while also being able to manage 26 as well. But it's definitely something that I'm going to consider because I don't think it will take too much to pivot to use that. And if Salah or Haaland, I'm not confident about them playing good minutes in that double, I probably won't want to triple captain them. So getting the bench boost out of the way before I wildcard could be decent as well. So I'm going to leave that video there because I think there's more questions than answers. But I thought it was worth talking about now that the finalists have been confirmed. We know that blank's almost certainly going to happen. Now we just wait for the FA Cup 4th round results this weekend because if some teams go out, we'll know they're playing in 29. That might mean we don't need to free hit that week and therefore we can use it in a different week. And for some of you, that might be 25 or 26. And it might be the same for me, but I need to wait and see or at least get more information. So if you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I'm still not sure when the next video will be because I'm trying to wait for as late as possible to start talking about transfers and stuff like that. So maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday, possibly before then if any other information comes up. But either way, I'm going to leave it there because I'm just rambling now. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for listening if you're on podcast. Rate 5 stars. Hit like and subscribe on YouTube. Catch you again soon.